All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. What I'd like to cover in this for my first class is the listing agreement, to be sure, as you know, as the backbone of what we're going to do with our people. And I think I may have possibly bitten off more than I can chew in the time that we have set aside for this, but I'd like to try and also address some of the other things that come up outside of that. But I'm going to first, because this is my first one, I'm just going to focus on the listing agreement. We're going to go through that first. And then if we have extra time, I have a whole list of other things that are very important to know about when you're listing a property as well. It is the backbone of taking a listing, but it is definitely not the only thing, to be sure. Let's see if I can make this just a tiny bit smaller.
Where's my computer at? Where's that other charger I had?
Thank you. Which one are you using? That might help you. 2021 September. We using the same one?
No, my charger for my phone. Remember, this is my charger for my work.
The one that we
Might be.
not the latest one.
It's not.
Nope.
This is not the latest one.
It's not the latest one. It's the latest one. The version that we're going to be looking at is from February 2022,
It's on internet. Huh?
which is the latest one. Yeah.
DocuSign probably doesn't have it yet.
Oh, is that what it is?
I didn't print those.
Okay.
Sample on it though.
Let me
I'm not sure.
ask McKinley if she can bring a few.
Here,
of
let me
those
just
in.
send it to her.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me assist you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have a rundown of the exact changes between the last version and this version. We're just going to go through this as new. How many people are on Zoom? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 or so. I can't tell. Okay. So you guys get your little space bars ready to weigh in. How many of you guys have not used the listing agreement to take a listing yet?
What did you say?
How many of you guys have not used the listing agreement to take a listing yet?
In other words, have not had a listing.
Yeah, have not had a listing where you've had to use the listing agreement yet. Has everybody done that? It sounds like everybody's used it at least once. Okay, so this is more of a refresher for people, if I understand. If you have not used this agreement before, please weigh in right now. Crickets. Okay, this is good. I mean, it's not good. It'd be fine if you hadn't used the agreement. I just wanted to get a feel for, the room.
I think Andrea had her hand up. She hasn't had a chance to use it yet.
Oh, good. Thank you, Alice, for keeping an eye on things. Please know, you guys, I can't see you. I can't see you guys. So if I ask a question, I'm going to ask you to use your space bar or unmute yourself to respond so that I can hear you, because I can't see the room. I can't.
So Maria, this is Steve. A clarifying question. Are you asking for those who have never ever used the listing agreement, or this particular listing agreement?
Who have never written a listing agreement with a client, any listing agreement.
Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like we've got Andrea, we've got one who has never used it. Okay, so that's good information, because I think so this first page then for we'll start from the beginning is called broker duties. Okay, this page has to be as a cover page on any written agreement that you create with a client, whether it's a purchase agreement, a listing agreement, a compensation agreement of any sort, a buyer broker agreement. This broker duties is very, very important. So there's 2 sections to the broker duties, and a lot of this is reminiscent of the ethics classes that we've all been taking for years. But you can see here that these are the duties that we owe our clients. and section A. So Alice, do you think I should go through these in detail, or is it enough to say you must familiarize yourself with this page and be very clear about what you need to provide your buyer? And one of the things I want to point out in particular is that this says that you must provide a copy of the written documents that your client gives you. So when your client signs a listing agreement with you, when you're done signing that agreement with your client, you have to give them a copy of it. You have to send them a PDF of the fully executed agreement. Yes, does DocuSign do that, or .loop? Does it do it for you? Yes, but you don't necessarily, it's difficult to get proof of that. I like to have a copy of it in my sent mailbox where it says, here's a copy of the agreement you signed, you know, and then I have proof that they actually did receive it. That's part of our duties, to make sure that the documents that we sign with them, that they have a fully executed version.
I think the only thing we might need to go over is just when a broker is talking with the seller, I think it's important just to tell the seller that in section A, those are duties you owe to the other party. So if you're talking to a seller, section A would be duties you owe to the buyer, because sometimes they think, oh, well, you're working just totally for me and you don't owe any duties to the other party. So that, I think, is just important to mention. And then to tell them that for them, we're representing, we owe them all of section A and all of section B. So the seller.
Okay, thank you, Alice.
Mhm.
So for the newer brokers, this section here comes up a lot. And I know it's a source of confusion for many people, these different ways in which we can help our clients. These are all different ways, legally speaking, that brokers can work with clients. These are options in the law, in the statute. We can do this. What we do, practically speaking, here is we only operate as a transaction broker. We do not operate as an agent for our clients. Although it's an option legally, we do not do that because it's just such a huge liability to do that. We do have, that's why part of the broker duty disclosures is letting people know these are ways in which we can have a relationship with you, but we are operating with you as a transaction broker, which is really the one. I mean, it gives us an obligation, of course, to, with our clients, but it doesn't open us up to mutual liability. Yeah. Alice, do you want to say anything more about those?
No, if you have, usually the only sellers who would ask you to do agency would be attorneys. So I would just tell them that here's the way I explain it. Just like attorneys are going to know the agency, but for other people, when we have an agency relationship, that makes us liable for whatever the seller says or does, and vice versa. It makes the seller liable for whatever we say and do. So usually when you just say that, the seller will say, oh, I don't want that. And they just move on.
So, thank you. Yeah, it's a good clarification. That helps a lot. Does anybody have any questions on this cover page? All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second cover page. So if you are working with a transaction coordinator, you must disclose this to your seller. You must disclose this to your seller. So they've made it a lot easier. Now all you need to do is check this box and put the name of the transaction coordinator in here. Now, the minute you do this, this also obligates you to take an additional step in the MLS when you put this in the MLS. You also have to disclose the transaction coordinator in that location. So there's lots of places in the listing agreement that trigger an additional action for you down the line. And this is one of those, this is the first of those places.
Maria, do you mind specifying where in the MLS we have to specify if we have a transaction coordinator?
Yeah, so there is a transaction contact is now an option in the MLS. Do you want me to just go and show it?
I know where it's at.
You know where
I
it's at?
just-
Okay.
Like,
I mean, I
is
don't know.
that a requirement? Because when I was on Sean's team, I actually would put the listing agent as the transaction contact, because I didn't want to be talking to everybody about all of.
Oh,
because
okay.
A lot of people would call me about the listing and what was going on with the listing instead of calling.
Okay. And that
Sure.
actually is an
And-
option for
and
the
then
broker. But
And
what
then
you,
I did put just my, that stuff in the LOS, so like
yeah.
listing broker. uses
So
that.
what I would do in that
TC.
case certainly also is to have a transaction coordinator disclosure
Yes,
for
we
the
did that
buyer.
too.
So there is a separate form for that too. I think it's called 2100A.
Yeah, we did.
And so that's something that you fill out and you upload to the MLS. Wasn't sure if we had to do that still, but I think we do now that you mention
I
it.
used to, when I was on the team, I
Yeah.
would do the 2100. I didn't do the A, but I guess we have to do the A2. But I would do, just so the buyer broker would know that there was a transaction coordinator to put it in the purchase agreement.
Yeah, because it's important for the buyers to be made aware that there's a transaction coordinator, because this is another person who's looking at their file. It's very important for the buyers to be aware. Who knows what the relationships are between people in this very small town? And your transaction coordinator may have, unbeknownst to you, some past relationship, positive or negative, with your client. So it's very important that that name of your transaction coordinator make it to the buyers or the sellers' eyeballs, so they know who else is going to be looking at this contract, and they can make sure they're okay with that and sign off on it.
Also, they made a clarification that now the only time you can call yourself a transaction coordinator is if you are licensed. So if you're doing TC work, but you don't have your real estate license, then you need to be called an unlicensed assistant or something other. You can't use this term TC.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's a really great clarification too, Alice. Yeah, you can't check this box and put the name of your unlicensed assistant in here. However, I would disclose to your seller that you are working with an unlicensed assistant, and who it is. And that's what you can use the 2100 for. I actually have all these forms in another, which I just don't think we're gonna have time to look at them. This might be a second class where we go through and do, okay, you've done the listing agreement. Now here's all the addendums you can do. Here's the different, lots of stuff that builds on the framework of the listing agreement.
So Maria, it's Jenny. Are you saying that like if someone uses, I don't know, admin angels, they need to fill out that other form and let them know?
I'm not familiar with admin angels. Are those licensed transaction coordinators?
No.
They're unlicensed. Yeah.
If it were me and I had somebody who was looking in my files, somebody who's looking at my paperwork for any reason, I would disclose that. If you have an unlicensed assistant who is not looking at your files and has no knowledge of your clients or the business of your clients, then I would say it's not an issue. Alice, how do you feel about that?
No, I agree. And the admin angels, and then some people have assistants over in the Philippines and that kind of thing. So I would say it might be good to mention to the seller, yes, you might be receiving one of the people that works on it. Her name's Honey Lee or Honey Lynn. So I think I would just mention to the seller, you might be receiving some documentation from Honey Lynn, and she is one of my team members.
That's how I'm doing it, Alice. I'm just stating that it's, we have a transaction assistant who will be taking care of just, calendar and passing of, information, no negotiations whatsoever. And that's how I'm disclosing them. I'm not putting them on any form at this point.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to skip to conflict of interest. This is an important one, very important. If you have any inkling that you may have a conflict of interest, or even an interest that's not a conflict, I mean, you're like, oh, it's a great property. My friend, bought this property, 10 years ago, and I know so much about the house because I've been in and out of it for parties these last 10 years. Like anything that you think might be remotely related to this transaction that that you wouldn't normally know should go on an additional disclosure to the parties. If you are filling this information out in this paragraph 2 here, then this also means that you should be filling out a 2100 additional broker disclosure and uploading that to the MLS so that all the parties are aware, not just your seller. So this is a trigger paragraph as well. This means you're going to be doing an additional disclosure in the MLS. Alice, do you have anything to add?
No, some people question, should they disclose, if it's an ex-sister-in-law or whatever. My feeling is you can never over disclose.
Yes, I agree 100%. Nobody's ever going to, you can't over disclose. You can't say it better. These are pretty simple, just ask the question because, it's kind of like that question when you're working with buyers and you say, hey, do you already have a real estate broker? It's a very basic question. You just should ask these questions. Are you a real estate broker? Even if they're an out-of-state broker, it would be good to disclose that. Let's say they have their license in Arizona. I would recommend disclosing that in the MLS. If they check this box, or if they say that they are a broker, that would be something I would put in the LOSA remarks or in a 2100 so that the buyer is aware. Of course we want to make sure that the seller is not subject to another listing agreement. You guys should know, this information, of course, should be fairly straightforward. Everybody, we've got brokers probably from lots of different offices. We've got 2 or 3 different offices right here in the metro area, or 4. So, your qualifying broker number, even though your qualifying broker is Alice, your number here might not be the same as my number. Because my office is not this Academy office, it's the office across the parking lot. There's a different number for that office. So make sure that you're using the correct number here. If you don't know what it is, check the roster. And that is all I have to say about that. All of us are realtors. Always check that box, yes. You can also safely say that if somebody has a property listed in the MLS and you're writing a purchase agreement for them, they are also, a realtor, because that's a prerequisite of our Board of Realtors.
Maria, what do you mean by your office is across the parking lot?
Keller Williams has another building that's over, and then over a couple of buildings away.
Luxury office.
The luxury office, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that office has a different qualifying broker license number. So that office is 18712. If your license is associated with this office here at Academy, your license number is 18709, right? And if you're with Tigo's office, your license number, if you're still under Alice, but your license number is going to be something different. And I'm sure, Alice, you have several other ones too, don't you?
And Felicia's down in Old Town.
Felicia, yeah. So that's what I mean by that. Most of us are going to be here at 18709 for the Academy office, most of us. But if you're not and you're in a different office, that number will be different. Does that help?
So I have a little cubicle at the luxury office. So I use a different,
that's a really good question, Roberta. So it's not based on where your desk is. It's based on where your license is hung, right? And
because I'm here because I'm in the main office right now.
Okay, so if your license is hung here at the main office, 18709, that's the number that you use. Even if you have a desk over in luxury.
Okay.
It's not about where your desk is. It's about where your actual license is hanging.
Okay.
Good question. I'm glad you asked that because that could be confusing.
So, okay, good.
Thank you. Okay, on we go. And so this paragraph is fairly straightforward. Of course, it's, this is where you put the seller's name. This is also, you can see here that this is, I wish this wasn't blocking my thing. Unless otherwise provided, listing broker shall act as transaction broker and not seller's agent. It's very clearly stated, we are not acting as agents, okay? This term, this is gonna be, the term of the agreement. So you want it to be, here, like here's an example. I often have people sign my listing agreement the minute we agree to work together. Now, that may be weeks before the property is actually listed in the MLS. But I want the term of the listing agreement to be the day we sign that together, not the day it's going in the MLS, because our agreement to work together starts today. So I create that, when I create my listing agreement, I always, put the first day of the listing agreement term to be the day that we begin to work together. So I can start ordering my floor plans and whatever it is, once that first day has elapsed. I don't want to spend any money before that. And then it terminates on whatever this day is. So, it's obviously it's up to you and your business, how long you make this. Is it 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year? It's up to you and what your seller agree. Any questions about that?
I would say the majority of them are probably 6 months.
Yeah, or 2 weeks these days,
Yeah.
right? Just, that was a joke. I wasn't meant to be,
I have a question there.
Yeah.
Do you typically put like exactly 6 months? Like, let's say we start our agreement today, March 8th. Are you going to do, what is it? April, May, June, July, August, September 8th? Or do you, like, I would always put it the last day of that month.
you can do whatever works
Okay.
for you.
Okay.
This is completely up to you and your
Okay.
client.
Just
No.
wondering what what typically people do.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no typical. It's really going to be up to you and what works for you and your
Okay.
client. This is something a lot of people forget to check the box here. You have to put this on the on the listing agreement, or it'll get bounced by compliance, which we haven't talked about yet. I wanted to get to compliance. I need to go faster. So you just have to make sure that you check residential. Look what I did. Look what I did. I did this just to show you guys what people do. I didn't check resale here, but I should have, because this is what we're talking about, is doing residential resale. We're not talking about new construction or anything like that. So you want to actually check this box resale here as well for a resale per se. We're not going to talk about other ways of selling property or other types of property. Other rights. Okay, 99.9999% of the time, the seller is not. Question is the seller aware of any wind, solar, water, or mineral rights that have been severed? 99.9% of the time, the answer to this question is no. Especially if it's in Heritage Hills, or like if it's anywhere in the regular city of Albuquerque. When you start to get into the North Valley area, or anywhere outside where there's land out in the county, you have to ask this question specifically, because they could have water rights associated with their property and they could have sold them. And that's very, very common, in fact, in the North Valley. So be careful of this. Don't just no, yeah, those are the circumstances under which I always ask. Alice, do you want to say anything about that?
No, you covered that perfectly.
Fixtures. Okay. This is something that when I'm taking a listing, I actually make my client, I sit there quietly and I make them read this whole paragraph. I make them read it. And I say, is there anything in that list that is in your house that you're actually planning to take with you? Because if so, I need to know that now. It's very important, because you get people who are like, oh, see the attached window coverings and rods. That stuff is supposed to stay with the house. It's supposed to stay. But if they're like, my grandmother gave me those curtains and rods and I'm planning on taking them and I was going to replace them with something from Walmart, that's fine. But you have to deal with that. You either have to deal with it on the purchase agreement, or they need to take them, ideally, do that before they do start showing the property and taking photos of it. Okay, but I make them read this paragraph, and I ask them specifically, because if there's anything that you need to handle, the time to know it is now. And then with personal property, same thing. I just sit there quietly and say, here's a list of things that probably are, you know, how many garage door openers do you have? You know, they'll go through and they'll say, yeah, washer, dryer, stay, but then you'll have to go through, they're not gonna, a lot of these times they don't catch some of this stuff and you might have to ask them questions. But, you know, I find that the best way to do this is just to make them read it and give them, you know, give you the information, because you can ask them questions all day long and, you know, because there's 80 things on this list. One thing that's not on here, or one thing I want to point out actually, is this TV mounts. Okay, everybody has one of those on their wall all over the house, one in the bedroom, one in the master, you know, one in the living room, one in the den. So I just want to say, word to the wise, this is not a purchase agreement class, but when you're taking a listing and you see these TVs and wall mounts, you ask your seller up front, are you taking the are you planning on leaving the TV or taking the TV? Oh, you're going to take the TV? Great. What about the mount behind the TV? Are you planning on taking that with you? Oh, you are? Well, then you realize you're going to have to patch and paint, right? This is a conversation you have to have with them. And then when you list the property, if there's a TV and a wall mount on the wall, you have to let the buyer's broker know that's not conveying. And that the seller is planning to patch and paint. It just avoids so many problems to do that. So if that's the case, I put it in an exclusion so that I can remember, like the things that the seller is not leaving, or they're gonna, like, I put this in an exclusion so that I can remember. Okay, they're not leaving the washer and dryer, and they're not leaving the television, but they are going to leave the wall mount. And then when, you know, 45 minutes later, when the listing sells and I have, you know, 20 offers, I don't have to try and remember, you know, what we agreed to. It's there. Don't try and rely on your memory because it's too busy. Listing price is pretty straightforward. I got to spend.
I just have a quick
time.
question, Maria.
Yes.
Can you hear me? So when you're going through this with the seller, are you doing this on your computer, or do you have a paper copy that you are writing notes in? I know this is kind of a funny question.
It's a good question. It's a good question. And it depends if we're meeting in person or if we're meeting via Zoom. To be honest with you, what you guys are looking at right now is what 85% of my clients are looking at when we go through the listing agreement together. I go through the listing agreement just like this, and I'm like, see this paragraph right here? And then, and I'm on Instanet, and I start typing in. Of course, I can't type into this form because it's not on Instanet. But I'm like, okay, is this what you mean? Washer, dryer, right? And I just fill it. I make the revisions live online with them as we go through. It's great. I love Zoom. I love doing agreements, purchase agreements and listing agreements over Zoom, because I can ensure that we are looking at exactly the same thing just by doing that. And there's no doubt.
Thanks.
Right? So, you know, if you're doing it in person, yeah, you know, you just bring a hard copy. But I personally think this is way easier now that now that we have had the option. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay, broker obligations. So this is really important. I'm going to go ahead and read through these because I think it's really important that we all understand what our obligations are, specifically called out. You know, of course, we're going to look for locating qualified buyers. We're going to assist potential buyers if requested in preparing offers. Now, most of the time, you know, our buyers come to us with a broker, which is such a relief. Thank you, broker community, for not having us do both sides. And we're also going to assist the seller in closing, pre-closing and closing. Also, this one, oh my gosh. Unless waived by buyer or prior to accepting an offer to purchase, the listing broker will request from the county assessor, not treasurer, assessor, the estimated property tax levy. I can't tell you how many listings I see every day where people upload the treasurer's tax bill or the last year's tax bill and the treasurer's estimate. That is not what the statute calls for. That's 2 pages. And people started doing that because when this statute was originally created, the assessor's office wasn't set up for it. And that was a workaround. And that was all we had. But now the correct thing to do is pull it from the assessor's office. The assessor's office has, and the reason why it's not trivial, the assessor's office is formatted the way that the statute calls for. It is one document with the prior tax year taxes, the estimated tax, and the required disclosure, instead of 2 pages from the treasurer. So this is really important for you when you're taking a listing to do it correctly. There's lots of times out there we're writing an offer and that we can see the brokers uploaded the treasurers. And you know what I do is I have my buyer client sign the assessor's version and I give the broker back what they, it's not my job to fix everybody and their business, right? I have my client sign both. I'm like, this is what the listing broker wants, but this is really what you're supposed to sign. So I have the correct thing in my file, and if they want, they can do what, that's their business. Seller obligations. This is important just to recognize that seller has a role in this too. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but because we're going to talk about it more later. But the things I want to highlight in this paragraph are, we do need to decide whether the seller is going to provide a property disclosure. Okay, so will or will not. This is the paragraph that decides whether or not they're going to have an adverse material facts disclosure for you to upload to the MLS or not. I recommend if your client says will not provide a property disclosure statement, that that you actually have them sign something that says they're not going to. And we have this, we used to have it in .loop. Alice, maybe you can tell me whether it still is. What?
There's one in DocuSign, the letter in loop.
Yeah, the letter in loop.
There's one in
So,
DocuSign under the KW form.
I can't see. Here we go. And this is what I recommend you have your people sign. And it's in .loop. It's, it just says, I'm not going to fill out a seller's disclosure. Okay. And then this paragraph H is asking them whether they have audio or video surveillance. Ring doorbells qualify as audio and video surveillance. They don't need to have, the whole thing with the cameras and the screens all over the house. It's just a Ring doorbell. That qualifies as audio and video. So if this box is checked yes, I strongly recommend that you disclose this in your LOSA remarks to your buyer's broker. In New Mexico, the statute requires that you can record anything you want, and only one person in the group, I think it's only one person needs to be aware. Is that right, Alice?
Yes, that is right.
So, as long as the broker is aware, if they forget to tell the buyers as they go through, it's okay. As long as the broker is aware, then nobody's at fault. They can have their fits over the seller heard them talking about whatever, and but nobody's going to get sued over that. Or they shouldn't.
Can I piggyback off the Ring doorbell, because I had
Yeah.
this happen? If the seller's taking it, you need to also put that in the exclusions.
Oh my gosh, you're so
I
right.
had to buy a new Ring doorbell.
Yes, it comes up all the time. People want to take their Ring doorbell.
Yeah.
So back up here in personal property, in other, or you want to say the Ring doorbell conveys, or you want to say the Ring doorbell does not. It's excluded. Now this is just between you and your seller, but that means you need to make sure that it goes into your purchase agreement. So when I am negotiating with a buyer, I always come back to this section in my listing agreement to check and make sure what stays and what goes, because I can't remember from house to house. So I always check this. And I let the seller know, oh my gosh, you know what? They asked for the washer and dryer, but you said you wanted to keep it. What do you want to do about that? You have to help them. They're not going to catch that stuff.
And you might buy a washer and dryer.
And you have, yes, I bought a refrigerator. Yes, I did. My last refrigerator that wasn't for me. Okay, so offers. We're not obligated to deliver oral offers. We are not also obligated to deliver all offers to the seller if you're already under contract. You can decide. If you already are under contract and somebody writes you another offer, this is the paragraph where you would have to decide whether you had to submit it or not. You know what this is for? It's from short sales. These days, you're not going to receive an offer after a property's in pending because it's crazy. But you know, if we ever get back to a market where short sales are a thing, this is more of a thing. An offer letter. Okay, this is really great for buyers, not so great for sellers. Offer letters, I can't tell you how many houses I've had buyers get the house because they tugged on the heartstrings of the seller and it worked. And they took, you know, a less beneficial offer financially because they enjoyed the story of the buyer. But this is basically talking the seller out of accepting those letters. That's what this paragraph is all about.
Actually, I think, doesn't Alice prefer we not accept them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And this paragraph is reinforcing that.
Okay.
This paragraph is talking sellers out of accepting offer letters because because it opens up the seller to a liability. So office policy recommends that you do not allow your sellers to accept offer letters. And there's a place for this in the MLS so that the buyer's broker knows, don't even send it.
So the buyer broker
Especially in
plays
this market, most sellers are like, I don't want to have to mess with emotional stuff. Let's just get it with
Cut to the
10
chase.
offers or whatever. It's like, you know, Oregon actually passed a law that said you can't do it, but then the judge just put a stay on it that you should be able to. So I don't know what's going to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But now there's an issue with that Oregon law. They're saying they were too hasty in doing that and they may have to retract it.
Yeah, the judges put a stay on it until they figure it out, but. Yeah,
Right.
Just because you don't want the sellers, I mean, it just becomes another factor. You know?
Yeah, we've got enough, right? We've got
If I'm a
enough.
buyer's agent broker, I was like, yeah, let's do it just to give one possibility, you know?
Right, it's great when you're the buyer. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for the buyer. I mean, sometimes it's the only edge you have,
Well,
right?
in Dallas, our team's competing at 40 to 50 offers.
Whoa.
So anything they could, they're actually giving things like, I'll give you tickets for a year to this, or I'll give you
Dallas
just adding
Cowboys.
things to, you know, and then writing the offer letter.
I
You
will
know?
pay for your firstborn child to go to college.
Not surprised.
Just kidding.
Okay, we're gonna talk more about the MLS entry rule here.
Becky has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
I have a question on going back to offers received after contract. Would that apply to backup offers as well?
Backup offer is, sorry about that. A backup offer is going to have a specific addendum to it that calls it out as a backup offer.
Okay.
And as such, it's handled slightly differently.
Okay.
But yes, you could submit backup offers and accept backup offers. Alice, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's good to encourage the seller just like to stick with the one offer he has. Sometimes if you put that in there that you'll show him other offers, then he might try to get out of offer 2 because he thinks he's going to, or out of offer 1 because he thinks he's going to get more money out of offer 2. So I think for everybody's sake, you just say, once we're under contract, we're under contract, period.
Right. And so that would mean in this paragraph, you would say, shall not be
Right.
submit additional offers to seller.
Mhm.
That's Alice's recommendation. MLS entry rule. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later on because there's this is also known as I believe clear cooperation. But you have to put your listing in the MLS within 24 to 48 hours, I believe. It's 24 or 48 hours?
24.
24. Okay. You have to put it in the MLS. Now this is weird, right? Because up here we put the term of the agreement starting. Let's say I'm working with my client and I've signed it today, but we're not actually going to publish it for a few weeks because we're going to be in the, we're doing our floor plan and whatever. So I'm going to talk about how to handle that case because in the interim, what do? You've got a signed listing agreement. I'm gonna go back to this paragraph here. So my mouse is really slow. In the interim, are you allowed to say, oh yeah, I've got a signed listing agreement, put it up on Facebook? No. You cannot market that property outside of your broker. You can market it within your brokerage, but you cannot market it to anyone else. You can't even call up your best friend and go, check it out, man. You know the house you've been looking for? I found it. That is a breach of this rule. The only people you can tell are the people within your brokerage. Alice, do you want to add anything about that?
No, that I'm going to talk to Richard Giddings with MLS about coming out and talking about clear cooperation and then some marketing. So
Okay, good.
just look forward to that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So on that, where you can market it to the brokerage, it's only the brokerage with the same that you're in with the same QB license number, correct? And don't you have to put exclusive for that brokerage first on the agreement, or can you do a regular listing agreement and still market it to anybody within your current brokerage, meaning Keller Williams and Academy, for example?
No,
Yeah,
you can do anybody that's, I have like 5 different license numbers, but you could send it, like if you're at 6703, you can send it to Venturi's or Shalisha down in Old Town or the luxury office. So anybody that's under my license is fine.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be exclusive to the brokerage on the listing agreement.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Question. It's confusing. So seller authorizations, let's see. Oh, let's see. I didn't see this one. Okay, right. So this is giving you permission to let the world know that there's audio and video surveillance on the property so that your seller can't come back and say, well, you blew my security system out of the water because you told everybody it was there. Well, this is giving you permission to do that. You have to be able to disclose it. This paragraph gives you permission to use whatever the seller gives you to market the home and to create the marketing materials for the home. They can't come back and say, oh, I sent you that thing, but I didn't want you to, do X with it. Well, this gives you permission to use whatever they give you. Alice, do you want to add anything about that?
No, it's like a lot of times the sellers will give you pictures that they, that they're pride and joy, but once they give them to you, then you can use them as you see fit.
Yeah. And they can't get them back. They can't be like, okay, thanks for listing my property. It's sold now. Can you take them off Zillow? No. Once they're out, once that cat's out of the bag, there's no getting it back. Those photos. So make sure, and we're going to talk about this in the next few paragraphs about making sure that the information that they give you is what they want disseminated. We're going to talk about that specifically.
I would also talk to the sellers about take down photos of their children, or when you're doing photos of the house, don't include the, gallery wall or any expensive artwork or, sculptures or that kind of thing. Avoid those in your photos.
So these authorizations are related to that. We're going to get down the list. You'll see it talks more specifically about it, but you have to specifically ask them for permission to put it in the MLS, and also to put it on the internet. And there's going to be some specific permissions a little bit later on that we're going to talk about. Now, typically speaking, I have all these checked yes in my template. 99.9% of the time, everybody wants a sign up. Everybody's willing to provide keys. Everybody, is willing to allow the property information to be disseminated. Everybody is willing to allow a lockbox to be installed. And one thing I'd like to say about lockboxes, please don't use contractor lockboxes in place of the Supra lockboxes. I know there's reasons why you would do that, but the compromise on security and the increase in your own personal liability as it relates to having one of those lockboxes on a listing, in my personal opinion, is not worth it. Photography, of course, we have to ask permission to take photos. And we're going to say more about that in a little bit too. Okay, so the seller may modify the following with written notice from the broker, right? Or see, oh, wait. Okay. So in this case, I have brokers call me all the time and say, do you put terms or existence in here? What do you do? And I always put terms. And here's why. I want the freedom to be able to make the decision about what's best for my seller when I have 20 offers. You know, if I just check existence in this box, all I can do is say I have 20 offers. Now, you know, if a broker calls me up and wants to make an offer at list price and I have 20 offers and all of them are over list, do I really want to present offer number 21 at list price? No, I don't. I don't want to waste everybody's time. I don't want to waste their time. And I don't want to waste my seller's time. So I put terms in here so that I can say, you know, something about the situation. I have 20 offers and, you know, some are over list.
I have a question about that.
I have to add something.
Okay.
I heard that.
1 second, Roberta.
If you
or Becky.
check terms in this, that you have to tell all 20 people the exact same thing on all the terms, and you have to communicate it at all times to everybody. That's what I heard.
So Alice, did you hear that?
I did, and I would agree with that. Yeah, you have to keep it a fair playing field for everybody.
So if nobody, like if you have a broker who just submits an offer but doesn't call and ask any questions, and then you have another broker who calls up and says, hey, I want to submit an offer, you know, what do you have any offers? How many do you have? What are the, you know, what can you tell me? Do you don't treat those two things differently?
Well, yeah, the person who's calls up and specifically asks, you're going to give them more information. If somebody doesn't ask, I don't know. To me, I just want to be fair to all people. So I would probably be overly fair by just saying, hey, I want to let you know, you know, we do have other offers, and if you're interested in knowing the terms, let me know.
Right. And I have to say that although it gets kind of dicey, and I haven't, you know, I have also done that where, you know, when you get to a certain point where you have people, you know, I have sent emails to everybody saying, look, you know, you get the first 2 offers, right? And they think they're the only 2, and then you get 5 more. I'll send an email to everybody saying, look, I have 7 offers now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's wise. And then if they have additional follow-up questions, I'll answer them. And so maybe you want to say something about that. Maybe that's not enough. I'd love to know what your, you know, if you feel like that's.
No, I think as long as you are fair to everybody. I mean, there are going to be, the other 6 are going to be mad. They're not going to think you're fair, but as long as you're doing what you can, you know, it's our job to get the best transaction, the best deal for the seller.
Yeah, the only thing is,
Okay.
can I say something now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had a situation where that came up and my buyer was like, well, that's not going to work because somebody could come in. So all offers are due at 5 o'clock on Saturday. So my buyer's like, well, why should we put in an offer on Saturday morning when somebody's going to come in at 5 to 5 on Saturday afternoon and top our offer? And so they walked away. And so it's kind of like, I mean, it can be good because everybody's aware, but at the same time, there are other buyers who are like, well, and this was a buyer that was paying like a lot more than anybody. And then the thing is, they walked away and the seller sold for $25,000 less than what my buyer was willing to step up to the plate with. So it really, they kind of shot themselves in the foot because my buyer was like, well, I'm not going to play the game because somebody could come in 5 minutes before time and top us. So why play? So it's kind of a catch-22 on that one, I would say.
Good point, Roberta. I've had buyers do that too. Oh, if there's multiple offers, I don't want to make an offer.
Same.
Yeah.
I've just told them, well, then you don't want to buy a house because that's kind of where we're at.
I'm kind of torn on that because I've like battled with that back and forth. And I feel like if your primary focus is your seller, because that's who you represent, then I think that the way to get the best out of the offers is to disclose terms.
Mhm.
Because you want the highest and best, and if somebody backs out, then they back out. But ultimately, your main responsibility is for your seller, not for the other brokers and not for their buyers.
Yeah.
So I personally feel like it'd be best to disclose terms, plus you're being honest with everybody, and you're saying, hey, this is what it is. If your buyer can beat that, great, and if they can't, I'm sorry, then you're gonna have to move on.
Yeah.
Just, that's my personal opinion, but I always like hearing everybody else's, and I think that everybody feels like, you know, no one's gonna think it's fair, right?
Yeah.
Because your buyer loses. But ultimately, our responsibility isn't to your buyer. We're being fair to you as a broker and saying, here's what I have. If you
Yeah.
can beat it, fantastic, but my main responsibility is for my seller, not your buyer.
So they kind of shot themselves in the foot with my buyer because my buyer would have paid more, but they weren't willing to, they didn't want to play the game.
And that's
So,
ultimately, you probably got the best deal for the seller,
But
correct?
business is a chess match. And so if the buyer's broker is not preparing their client
I
appropriately,
agree.
that is not
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
the
it's not on the
seller's
seller.
agent. And so part of it is that that's unfair to the buyer, but that's not on my thing.
Yeah.
I created the terms. I standardized the communication across the board. What you do with your client is what you do with your client. But I've done my fair duty and my due diligence to my clients.
I've had that happen.
who's talking?
Oh,
Hi, that's Ashley. Nice to
Ashley
meet
Quinta.
you.
can you guys hear?
So repeat what you just said, Ashley.
Hear us, they just can't see us. That's why she's asking.
But I've had that happen as a buyer as well. And I really appreciate the fact that the seller's broker said, hey, well, what are you coming in with? This is what I have. There's no point in putting it on.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Let
Yeah.
your buyer know and explain to them how this market is working, and maybe that'll help them to win an offer.
But I agree with Ashley. You gotta start with if you're the buyer, you gotta start with the buyer and tell them what the market's doing right
Yeah.
now. So that they
Set the
know, if
expectation.
they're willing to pay more, great, but you're gonna compete. This is how it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Set the
then,
expectation.
but I like most of what you said. I pretty much do it the way you do it, Maria, on that seller side.
And
I just didn't
agree
know.
with that too, because of the fact that it saves time, because again, if you're waiting, then your client, if you know that your client can't meet that where it's at, then your client will move on to the next property.
Yeah.
They don't lose out, with the whole waiting over the
And they're not
weekend for it.
disappointed either. That's disappointing to go through the process, of
Mhm.
writing up the contract,
Mhm.
going over terms and doing everything and getting your hopes up and then, oh, sorry, we didn't get it. I'd rather know right off the bat and say, no, we're not close. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's move
Linda
on."
DeBlake has her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Linda.
Hi there. So I know a couple of you, and this isn't really in the listing agreement, but just remember that when somebody in MLS says seller is waiting until Tuesday at 5 to look at all offers, never believe them. Just present your best offer because they don't have to comply with that. Because it's up to the seller, not you guys. We're not agents. We're not speaking for our clients. And so I don't know why people put that stuff in there, but you don't have to pay attention to that because I've had sellers have 21 showings scheduled. They get 2 really good offers and one of them is so good they don't want to let it get away, so they accept it before the 21 showings happen.
Yeah.
I always put an LOSO that, they're gonna review offers on Monday. However, they reserve the right to accept an offer prior to that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been burned a couple of times, so that, yeah, Tigo's, I think in one of our masterminds, Tigo said that's what they do. They just start putting, seller reserves the right to accept it. Well, because I got burned a couple of times where I was waiting until the last minute for my buyer to write that offer, and all of a sudden Saturday night, they accept one when they're, gonna look at offers at
Yeah.
6 on Sunday, so.
It's a risk. It's a risk not to
So
get
now
in there
I don't do
early.
that anymore. I just tell the buyer, let's put the best thing we can together, let's get it in there.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're saying Monday or not, we're gonna get something in
And I
time.
think that's what communication is key. You should be staying in touch with that seller's broker to say, hey,
Oh, totally.
we're waiting, what are you thinking? Do you have a little bit of time? Have you seen something you might just keep in contact with them, develop that relationship.
I can't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I cannot agree with you
Only
more.
challenge with that is when you have like 20 offers as a listing broker, and people are mad at you because you can't get back to, you're like, everybody's calling you. So I mean, I
That is a
agree.
challenge,
You try
yeah.
to communicate. Sometimes the email is the best way. Hey, guys, everybody's calling me. Here's an update. But I had one where I had 18 offers, and I was trying to sit down with the sellers. This is a couple of years ago, and like everybody's calling me, and then they're like, all these other buyer brokers are mad at me, and I'm like, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Just let you know the sellers are reviewing.
Well,
Yeah.
we've been trained to call, text, and immediate. So you call, you text, you and you keep doing that.
Well, if you're the buyer broker, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Moving on, open house.
Awesome. Open houses. So open houses by the other brokers. So you're going to see where my check is in this box. Broker to authorize associate and qualifying brokers within brokerage. Right? So that means that anybody who is under Alice's license can hold the house open. Also, I'd like to point out this section right here. Associate brokers under different QBs within the same brokerage can hold open houses for one another if the independent contractor agreement allows it. Okay, so our independent contractor agreement allows this. And I do believe, Alice, weigh in on this. Our contractor agreement is across our market centers. So we're considered, our market center we are all owned, including the West Side, Academy, we're all owned by the and Santa Fe, right?
Mhm.
So we are
Yes.
considered, for New Mexico Real Estate Commission purposes, one brokerage. That's Academy, Riverside, and Riverside has a different QB, but we have the same ownership. It's a little confusing, but in this particular case, we are considered one brokerage. Is that correct, Alice?
Yes, even though Jerry Garcia is a QB over Riverside, we are all under Go Management. So we did get permission from the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. But as I say, you got to have this box checked. So you've got to discuss it with the seller and make sure the seller's okay with you having somebody from another office. And I would say the only time we're going to relent on this is if it's another Keller Williams office. We don't ever want you to go out and hold open a Berkshire Hathaway. To me, that's too misleading to the public. So we can do it among our KW offices, but not other brokerages.
We can do that now because there was a time where we could not do that.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
That we were still trying to figure it out. That
Okay.
was Chrissy's question. Yes, we can hold open West Side listings, Riverside listings, and
Okay.
Riverside can hold open our listings.
Right.
And if we're licensed in Santa Fe, we can hold Santa Fe.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not licensed in Santa Fe. Some people are.
Okay, this is this is one of these often overlooked little paragraphs that I think is actually really important, and I want to spend a little time on it. Do we only have an hour set aside for this class?
Yes, and I've got another one starting at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to have to jump off.
You go ahead and jump off.
Okay.
I know that we were only halfway through, but we had some really great discussions, and hopefully we can pick this up again. Alice, I know you're taking off, but I want to go through this one paragraph, and then I'll just wrap it up and people can leave who need to leave. And if anybody wants to stay, I will continue to go through it for another 20, 25 minutes for anybody who wants to stay. But if we do another class, we'll pick up from here. So the one thing I want to point out about this is really important because this dictates what you put in the MLS. This paragraph, it says seller does not want the address of the property published. Some sellers do not want the address listed. They don't want people driving by their house. They have privacy concerns and they don't. 99.9% of sellers do, but you want to make sure that your seller is one of those sellers, because if they're the 1% who doesn't want their address listed and you publish that to the world, you are going to be in a world of hurt with that person. So don't overlook this paragraph. Make sure that they're good with having their address go everywhere for a house for sale. This paragraph is a little obtuse. The second one, seller does or does not want the viewers of the property to have the capability to comment. So this is, you see listings out there on web pages and people can make comments about them. That's what this is. Has to do with allowing permission for people to comment on this listing after it's published. So, anybody else out there can go, oh my God, look at that, look at the color of that living room. And your seller's like, I can't believe people are out there dissing my house.
That orange shack carpet.
Yeah. So, you want to make sure that people are okay with that. Keep in mind that these are all, well, actually, I'll say that at the end. And then the last one, this one I think is super important. This has to do with those automated value assessments that you see, like Zillow Z-estimate, right? Where they just like pull a number out of their magic hat. Thank you. And this is the value of the hat. I mean, of the house. So, I actually look at the Zillow Z-estimate and I'm like, well, is it $10,000 more or less than our list price? Does it help me or hurt me, my seller, as it relates to how people are perceiving the house? And I show it to them because so many people look at Zillow now. You can't ignore it. That said, this information is only for MLS participants, meaning like I'm not sure that Zillow is actually required to adhere to these. They may still be able to do their Z-estimate. I haven't checked on that, but like Realtor.com can't do it. Realtor.com is an MLS participant, and they could not. They would not be able to do an AVM. Linda, do you know, does Zillow pick up on these, and does it?
I can tell you, the last time I had it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. There you are, Lisa. Okay.
Yeah, the last time I said no to this, I did not see an AVM on Zillow.
Hey, okay, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that, because this can be your friend or your foe, and it's one of those buried paragraphs that we don't pay attention to, but it's actually really super important. So anybody else want to add anything about those?
You do have to go in, when you're in the MLS, you do have to uncheck it in the very last tab. The default in the MLS, as Chrissy is pointing out, is these are all turned on, and comments, AVMs, and the address are all disseminated, unless you specifically opt out with the checkbox. All right, I'm going to stop there, and then anybody who wants to stick around for 15 or 20 minutes can do so, and we can keep going. I mean, this waiver of marketing is a really important paragraph, and there's a couple things coming up that I'd like to cover, even if we cover it twice in the next segment. Thanks you guys for being here for the hour, and I'm sorry it took so long. Hope the information's good. Agreement class took 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah. So we'll do it again. I actually thought we had set aside an hour and a half for this, so I apologize.
We just want to comment in the future, and it'll go quicker.
Okay.
I'll save your questions for the end, people.
Let's see. So reporting false information. This is a cover CYA for us. The sellers can let us know that there's false information out there on the internet, but it's letting them know and giving them notice that we have very limited ability to change that. In fact, oftentimes the seller has a better foot for changing that than we do. So it's just giving them a notice so that we can point to this paragraph when they call up and say, Zillow says my house has evaporative cooling, and it's, well, I can let them know, but that's, if they don't change it, that's it. Okay, waiver of marketing. So I wanted to really circle back to this, because remember in the very beginning, we talked about the term and when your listing agreement starts and your obligations for marketing and publishing based on the term date and when your agreement starts. So this paragraph gives you the freedom to not publish this in the MLS immediately, and if you use it properly and you're still following the rules. I wish Alice were here for this part. So what I do is because I know, how many of you guys who are still here sign your listing agreement in advance of actually publishing the property, significantly in advance, 124. Okay, I've got 2 in the room. How many in the Zoom call? I see hands.
Yes.
1, I got
Yeah.
Lisa. Okay,
Everybody.
okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say how I handle it, and then I want you guys to weigh in if you do it differently or you have questions or concerns, because I've talked about this with Alice on different occasions, but she's not here to yeah. So what I do, you have 2 different options here. Broker shall not market the property through the MLS, or broker shall begin marketing the property in the MLS within 48 hours of. So if I've taken the listing today and I know we're going to do our photos in 2 weeks and we're aiming for a listing in the beginning of April, then I put in here that information, you know, that we're not going to be, I either put in a date, or sometimes I know that I am not going to list the property until I have a professionally drawn floor plan and professional photos. So what I also have put in here is until such time, you know, within 2 business days of receiving professionally drawn floor plan and photos. I also do that. That's not an actual date, so it makes some people uncomfortable. But I'm going to say what I also do then is follow it up with an amendment when I know what the dates are. And I say, okay, we're going to publish the property in the MLS on, you know, within 1 business day of X. And I actually do a date. So this is a placeholder to, you know, I want to know if GAR or Swimlist calls me up and says, you know, and takes an audit of my files, I want them to know that we address this. But sometimes I don't have all the information up front, and that's how I handle it.
Do you add verbiage in the amendment that states something to the effect of unless something changes with the scheduling of the photos or whatever?
Yeah, but she knows when her photos are scheduled and she's got them.
So it's
That's
pretty
probably
set in
what-
stone once you get it squared.
Usually.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you know, I like to have dates. You know,
Maria
so
likes dates.
I like
I
dates.
can tell you that.
Yeah.
I used to like dates.
Wouldn't
Dating.
you create your, wouldn't you, Maria, wouldn't you create the amendment after you have gotten to that moment in time where you know you're ready to list it, and not create the amendment right up front here, so that way your dates will be where they need to be?
You're absolutely right. I was just saying this alone is not your listing agreement completely, that there would be an amendment that follows this up that gives that published date, or, you know, within 1 business day of X, you know. Yes, I think we're agreeing on it's not written at the same time as this.
Yeah, you write it once you like
Once you
actually know
know.
when you're gonna schedule those things and when they're gonna be completed, really.
Yeah.
When are the photos gonna be completed, and when's the floor plan gonna be completed? Because then you know within 24 to 48 hours of that, you're able to put it in that MLS.
Yeah. So one of the things I actually wanted to do with this class was be like, oh, we have to have a floor plan. How do we do a floor plan? How do we get a floor plan? Like, those are all things that I do want to
This is like a
address, but
series you could do.
yeah, it's kind of a lot. There's a lot about
I
listing.
have a listing, now what?
Does anybody have any questions about this waiver of marketing or other ways that they do it, or
That's what I do.
anyone?
I just say to be determined by seller, because after we get our photos and floor plan and what have you, then we're ready to go. But we have to wait until they're ready.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I always did, professional photos being delivered to listing agent or listing broker.
Okay.
That's what I put it, within 48 hours.
So then I'm going to move on to tenant occupied property. This is actually also really important. I'm sorry to do this to you. Everything's important in this agreement.
Yeah.
If the property is occupied by a tenant, there are several very important things that you must do. First of all, there's another addendum, or excuse me, another agreement that you have to have the tenant sign in order for you to be able to show the property. And if you want to hold an open house, they have to give permission for that in advance. And photos, excuse me. Yes, and photos. So you have to get written permission from them before you can do any of that. So that is, there's another form for that, which I'm just gonna pop up really quick because a lot of people haven't seen it.
And the seller has to sign it too.
Yes,
All
of course, the
parties.
seller has to sign all agreements about their properties, but so this specifically asks for tenant consent for photography, for an open house. You know, this says it may occur on such and such a date. You may or may not know that at the time. You know, you know, and it lets you know if you want to have an open house, they need at least 3 days advance notice, right? And also just helping everybody to understand that the tenants require more notice. I mean, I think we all know this, or hopefully we know this, but tenants are legally entitled to way more notice than the average seller.
Minimum 24 hours. I think.
Yeah.
That's
Minimum 24 hours. That's what they're entitled to. Also, I would like to say that if you do have a tenant occupied property, it would behoove you to upload to the MLS the tenant occupied property addendum, because a lot of brokers don't realize that it's a thing. And it protects, it spells out a lot of information. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It spells out a lot of information that is going to be crucial for the transaction, right? It makes provision for delivering the rental agreements
That's if
to
they're
the buyer.
staying,
Huh?
right? That's if they're staying.
No, this is if you have a tenant occupied property,
That
period.
was only if they were staying in the property.
Well,
If they're leaving the property, if they're moving out, like.
if they're
let's
giving
say-
relinquishing possession.
Yeah, then I don't think you have to use this. I think it's only if they're staying in the property
Right. If I were,
per their lease.
yeah. If I were a buyer's broker and I were making an offer on a tenant occupied property, I'd still want to ask for a copy of the lease to make sure that the tenants are obligated to leave. But yes, if you have, yeah. So this is just a very important agreement. I don't want to go through it right now, but I want you guys to be aware of it. If you're selling a property where the tenant is going with it, you want to upload this to the MLS. And you want to fill it out in the way that you want your seller, that's beneficial for your seller. Because people either won't submit it or they'll submit it half filled out or etc. I'm gonna stop there because my phone is blowing up and clearly it's something I need to address. But we can start with compensation next time. Actually, no, we'll go back and cover this again. Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up that you want to ask that we didn't cover?
I do have a question, Maria. This is Emily, and you talked about it just very lightly in the beginning about representing buyers and sellers at the same time. Would you like to talk any more about that?
Sure.
About your position?
I have a personal position about representing buyers and sellers at the same time. The general situation is, of course, you can do that as a real estate broker. You can represent both parties at the same time. Some brokers are willing to do that. I personally am not willing to do that.
Refer the buyer to.
Yeah, that's what I do is if I have a listing and I get somebody who calls me, I refer that buyer to another broker. What I do is I actually ask I'll let my seller know all this. I'm like, this is what I do. I encourage you to, but I ask the buyer's broker for a referral for giving them the buyer. If it closes, I get a referral fee for that. And what I do is I disclose that to the seller and I reduce their commission by that amount. So they get a break for the fact that I actually found them a buyer and but I didn't want to represent both sides. So they actually get a discount. Sellers love that. Not everybody wants to take that step. But you could also, if you wanted to just take the referral, you'd have to disclose that, of course, to your seller that you were accepting a referral for that. Does that?
Yeah, it does. That helps. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions about that? Or other ways that they do it? I don't see anybody raising hands. I can't see everybody. Thank you
I have
so
one,
much, you
Marie.
guys. Dorothea, is that you?
Yes, thank you. Back to the
Thank
love
you so
letters.
much.
Back to the love letters. You know, you disclose it and you put it in the MLS, not, that they're not going to be accepted, but I found in 2 of my cases that the other brokers submit them anyway. And what do you do with them?
So I wish Alice were here for this, but what I would do is send it back, reply and say, I am unable to present this to the seller.
Okay.
I will not be presenting it. You want to let them know that it's not going to be, even though they submitted it, it's not going to be seen by the seller. I think that's.
Okay, that's an easy fix. Thanks.
Anything else? Thanks, you guys. Any other questions? I think we're good. All right, I'm gonna, I'll leave this Zoom call up for a few minutes in case you guys want to talk amongst yourselves. I have to apparently answer my phone.
Thank you, Maria.
Thanks, you guys.
Pleasure to meet you in person.
You too. Tell me your name.
Joseph.
Oh, Joseph.
Yes,
Oh
ma'am.
my gosh, you're Joseph. I should have recognized your.
Pleasure to meet you.
your-
Great class.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry it went so slow, but I
It's
guess.
okay. No, I thought it was great. Tons of information. So
Awesome. Have
I
a
appreciate
wonderful
it.
day. Thank you,
as
Joseph,
well.
for everything that you've always
Absolutely.
done.
If you need anything, let me know.
You know I will.
Okay. We'll see you later.
All right, bye-bye. All right, how do I get?
On Zoom land, I have a question. For the who are still on. So and Chrissy, are you still in the room?
I am.
So you know, the other day when we talked about what to put on Novalink, the county tax stuff, and then I pointed out to you that that's available on that MLS tab under Flex MLS. Talking about to get tax information.
Yes.
So when you click on that tab, it takes you to a page that the MLS wants you to go to. Is that the page that Maria is talking about for the treasurer, not the county? Because it's
Actually just learned
the
something.
right page uploaded in the Flex MLS for us to use.
I've always gone to the treasurer's page, I do believe. I'm not sure which pages I'm using. I need to go look because I think I'm doing it incorrectly.
I actually took a core class. This is Brian. I took a core class a couple of years ago and the trainer actually said switch, because I used to use treasurer all the time. And he said switch because you'll get both the current tax and the estimated tax. And so I switched over, but I don't go through MLS. So I might check that, Jenny, see what happens.
Right. So if you go.
I log into the assessor's office, I just click on the assessor's office and you can go to the right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but built into our Flex MLS on the upper left corner, it says home MLS and MLS training. And if you click on MLS, it takes you to a page and every county is listed. Sandoval County, Torrance County, Bernalillo County. You click on Bernalillo County if you're trying to find that, and it takes you to the assessor.bernco.gov page. So if we are, per the listing agreement, supposed to do something different, then that needs to go maybe to the powers that be that have uploaded this page that they're telling us to use.
So you go to menu and then MLS, or where do you go under that, after that, to find this? Because Brian's trying to see if it's the same page that he's using.
So once you land on Flex MLS, this is what my page shows me. So if I click on, it takes me into the GAR, and then it takes me into Flex MLS. If you go up underneath, where it says menu, right underneath that, you have 3 drop-down menus, MLS, home, or MLS training.
Hold on. Oh, okay, we have MLS training, MLS products, MLS.
Yeah, so click on MLS. And you'll see in the middle of the page, MLS links. And Rio Rancho school maps, IDO zoning, and then you'll have all the county tax pages.
Yes, that's the page you should be using.
So the Bernalillo, but that takes you to the assessor page. Is that what you're saying we
The
need?
right page. Yeah, that's the right page.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Because within that page, you can also do values and tax calculator.
Yeah, so, yeah, I usually go to the treasury, in the last 5 years I've been doing this, I was taught to go to treasury pages, but that's not, this is correct. You're correct in going to these. That's what,
Okay.
for the listing agreement.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, because I needed to know that, because I was doing it
Yeah.
wrong.